Hello there, everyone. I am Aaron St. Dennis, the FF Mad Scientist, and this is the Mad Science Lab podcast. Today we are continuing on with studs and duds, and hopefully we won't have any technical glitches. I've got 19 browsers open with various Scott Fishbowl stuff going on, the draft, and right in my background, hoping to get on the clock during the show, but we'll find out. Here to help me with today's studs and duds is Drew Mezera. Drew, thanks for joining me, man. It's great to have you.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me back on. Love to talk football. And I'm also hoping to be back on the clock at some point here in the next few minutes, but we'll see.
How many picks away are you?
Our draft is moving. I think I'm 6 picks away now. My entire league, like if you know how you can look at if you're on your phone, like it can tell you who's like in the draft room.
Yeah, it shows the little green
light
dot.
is green basically, so everyone's ready to go.
I've got me, and the only 2 other people who are on right now are the people on the exact opposite end of the board. So the 3 people who picked before me are not on for me to finish out my second round here.
Not looking good.
Yeah, it might be a while. So, all right, Drew, you want to take a second here to tell everyone where they can find you and your work?
Yeah, totally. So you can find me at Dynasty Drew FF on Twitter, and then I also write fantasy football articles for the FF League winners. And speaking of Scott Fishbowl, I wrote an article on targets, and a lot of them are in the later rounds. So if you are in Scott Fishbowl and you wanted a few guys to possibly look to draft, you can go find the article at the FF League winners.
I'm glad you had something to say there, because as you started, it dawned on me that I was so focused on SFB, I forgot to bring up the background page with the actual ADPs. So I would have said, hey, let's check in on his ADP, and realize there was no screen to check. So we will start your first stud, Jahmyr Gibbs, Detroit running back. No stats from last year because he's a rookie. Current ADP is 36 overall on Fantasy Pros. Let's double check that now that I've loaded my page up. Jahmyr Gibbs is currently going 36 overall, RB15. What is it about Gibbs that you like?
So I just love the draft capital. That's a big influence for me. Another reason is that, he's more of a receiving back. He didn't have as many carries as like a Bijan that went top 12. They're totally different players in my opinion. However, we have some past information, like we have CMC and Alvin Kamara, who both had under 125 total carries as rookies. Both finished as top 10 fantasy running backs because of their receiving upside, which I do believe Jahmyr Gibbs has. His final season in college, he had more catches than every running back drafted in the top 12 over the last 10 years, except for Saquon. And Saquon, I believe, had over 120 targets as a rookie. I'm not expecting that type of numbers. They have a lot of weapons there, but I do think he will average close to 5 or 6 targets a game, especially with Jameson Williams being out early. I think that he's a good player that you can grab. And if he does so well and you think he can't keep it up when Jameson Williams comes, you'll be able to get a big package for him. And I think he'll be very valuable to start the season and continue with that. And then another stat I have is over the last 10 drafts, only 8 running backs have been drafted top 12. 6 of them have already played, and all 6 of them, all 6 of them finished top 8 running backs. So at RB15, I feel like it's very, very unlikely he finishes lower than that. So that's another reason I really like him. And then the reason he's so low, in my opinion, is because they believe David Montgomery is going to take a lot of the red zone touches, a lot of the carries. And I think if you're playing in a PPR league, that doesn't matter a whole lot. I think that he'll get his touchdowns. He's a breakaway player, so he doesn't need red zone touches to get touchdowns, in my opinion. So those are a lot of the reasons I like Gibbs.
He's someone I don't have a whole lot of. Like, I have a few shares of rookie drafts that I had him. I don't have a whole lot of them in redraft. I think he's been going probably higher than he should be. But I also, in the same sentence, think he starts off really hot. That 6 games without Jameson Williams, like, he might be a top 3 running back by the end of week 4, week 6, just based on target volume alone.
Right.
It's going to be him and St. Brown, and they can't throw to St. Brown every single play.
Exactly. And the other wide receivers there are like Marvin Jones, Josh Reynolds. Sorry about my dogs. But yeah,
I forgot Marvin Jones is even back. But he's going in the end of the 3rd round, start of the 4th, in a range with Breece Hall, ETN, Ken Walker, Joe Mixon, Aaron Jones. What do you think about him in that group? You taking him over everyone in that group, or?
Yeah, so I think Ken Walker's tough because he's not the receiving back. I think that Zach Charbonnet is a better receiving back. So, in that type of offense with that many weapons, I'd rather have the receiving back, and so that's what Gibbs is. So I give Gibbs the edge because I do think he gets more of the volume touch or the points touches, and then with Aaron Jones, it's kind of the same thing. Like he's with AJ Dillon. I think they're around the same range. I'm a lot higher on Aaron Jones than most people. I have him, I think, RB13, and I have Gibbs at RB10, which even then, that's low compared to what we see with the running backs before him that were drafted top 12. But I think that, like you were bringing up, Gibbs is a great player. Even if you don't believe in him, I think you should believe the fact that he'll be a great running back the first 6 weeks. And if you don't believe when Jameson Williams comes back that he'll still be good, his value would be way higher than when you draft him.
Sell high.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Moving on to your next stud, we have Carolina. That's so weird. Every time I look, I'm going, wait, Carolina. Yeah, okay, Carolina. It's so weird. Carolina running back Miles Sanders finished as RB15 last year, 1,269 rushing yards, 78 receiving. That seems low. That might be a typo. I'm not sure. Touchdowns 11, 235.2 full PPR points, good for 12.75 per game. ADP is currently 51 on Fantasy Pros. Let's see if that's changed. Actually, he's gone down over the weekend, down to 61.
Wow.
RB20 overall. What are your thoughts on Miles Sanders?
I just think that he's another player where you're drafting him at his floor. Finished as RB15 last year. And, I mean, he did have a lot of touchdowns, which is probably going to be regressing with a worse offense, what we expect to be a worse offense, a worse offensive line. However, I'll get to the offensive line in a little bit. But I think that with Miles Sanders, at RB20, you're not taking as big of a risk as you are with some of these other guys that I think he's got into the 10 to 15 range like he did last year. And this 78 yards might be correct, honestly. He was not used as a pass catcher the last 2 years. However, his first year in the offense, he had, I think it was 49 catches or close to 50 catches. And Frank Reich talked to him about his rookie year and brought up the pass catching. And Miles Sanders is really interested in doing that again. Obviously, every running back wants to have the full workload. But I think that he's going to be able to show it. And I think that'll give him the points that he might be missing out on with touchdowns. Because he was absolutely nowhere in the passing game this past year and the year before that.
No,
so
it's right. He only had 20 catches for 78 yards. It is correct.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of positives to see in the passing game where there's an offense with Chuba Hubbard and I think Raheem Blackshear is their other running back's name. So like Deontay Foreman's not there anymore. And so I think there's a chance where he can take the full workload in this offense. And speaking of that, he has the perfect coach to do that. He has Frank Reich, who in his entire coaching career, calling plays, he has never had an RB2 in his offense finish with more than 20% of the carries, which is a mind-blowing stat in my opinion. He's one of the few guys left, him and like Mike Tomlin basically, who give the full workload to one running back. And I think that we saw that with Jonathan Taylor, who finished RB1 2 years ago. Now, I don't think he's the same running back as Jonathan Taylor, but that just showcases what he likes to do with his running backs, which is give them a ton of touches, which I don't think enough people are talking about. And another thing that's very underrated is their offensive line, in my opinion. The offensive line was terrible 2 years ago, but it took a big step forward last year and it looks to continue to do so moving forward, in my opinion. So those are a lot of reasons why I like Miles Sanders.
I've never been the Miles Sanders guy, but this year I have been. I have a lot of shares of him so far. He seems to be, did I bring that up? Did I bring up the 8? Yeah, I did. Okay. He seems to be in this hot zone where I don't get the guys above him much. I don't have much Mixon, Jones, or Pierce. This little trio of Dobbins, Sanders, Akers always seems to fall, and I normally end up with 2 or 3 of them back to back. Like in SFB, I'm going to be on a turn here. And if this gets to like a 5-6 turn, 6-7 turn, it's very likely I might double tap 2 of these or James Conner later. I definitely don't hate it. Like I said, I've never been the Sanders guy. I've always been out on Sanders. But this year he may see, like, I doubt he sees a career high in receptions from his rookie season.
No, I don't think so.
I think he comes close, and I think he sees a career high in everything else. Like, this offense just doesn't have anything else to go with him. So
No,
he's
I'm
going to
saying,
be
like I
the
said,
focal point.
their offensive line is turning the corner from what it was a few years ago, and I think that's going to be a huge reason why. And I think if Bryce Young can string some stuff together, then it opens up the offense, because there's no doubt he's going to be seeing loaded boxes to start. So all we really need to see is Bryce Young make some strides as a rookie, and I think that by the end of the season, that's when you could be seeing him win you some fantasy championships by blowing up.
Next up, we'll start with your duds. And just looking at both your guys, you have two of the guys I hate most. Two of the guys that I am avoid. I own 0 shares of any of them. I'm not doing it with either of them. We'll start with, excuse me, Vikings running back Alexander Mattison finished as RB51, largely as the backup. 283 rushing yards, 91 receiving, 6 touchdowns, 90.4 per game, 90.4 full PPR points, 5.2 per game. ADP is 74 overall on Fantasy Pros. He's gone up to 70 RB25. This is a case where it's easy for me. Do I want Madison at 70, or do I want Dobbins, Sanders, Akers in the 60s? For me, it's pretty easily the other three. Like, I get it. In the games where Cook left or missed them, he put up top 5 RB numbers. But the problem with that theory is the Vikings didn't have a plan for it, and there was nobody else. They know what's going on. They know he's their RB1. Ty Chandler or Dwayne McBride is going to be factored in, or they're going to play more or pass more. This is not going to be Alexander Mattison, the 75% touch share running back. And that's why I'm out at this current cost. If you can sell him in Dynasty, sell him. I assume your thoughts are going to be something similar, but
Yeah, I was saying you took about 75% of my points. I was like, I feel like that's been the biggest knock for people that hate him, or not hate him, but dislike his value. And I think that it's a great reason to dislike him, because all those reasons you said are great points. And I think that not many people are discussing the fact that Ty Chandler and Dwayne McBride, one of them will probably have a decent role in the offense, because when he was when he was brought in to fill in a role when Cook was injured or when he missed time, they didn't really have anyone else there to game plan with. Like you said, like it was just him. Like they didn't have a third running back, so it all came down to him, and that's the only reason he was doing so well. And yes, if he's given that workload, he'll probably do really well. But I don't expect him to get that workload, because
really
they want him to stay
inefficient.
healthy. What'd you say?
Sorry, he's really inefficient as well.
I was say that was literally the last point I was going to bring up that you didn't bring up, was that
he nauseated his way to a good finish in those games with just sheer volume.
Yep. His first 2 years, he was very efficient, but the last 2 years, and although it was limited touches, but he still averaged under 4 yards a carry. So the last 2 years, so that's not great to see. And there's just the one dynasty note is you're right. You should definitely sell him, because there's I'm not going to guarantee, but there's probably about an 80% chance they have a different starting running back next year.
He's a sell for me in Dynasty. I know we're not talking Dynasty here, but he's a sell for me in Dynasty. The same reason I was telling everyone to sell Tony Pollard. I get it. It's the first year of both of them being the theoretical number one bell cow in their offense. Alex Madison's almost 26. Why the hell do I want to buy a first-time starting running back who's pretty much at the end of the running back age range? Right. Like, even if he's good this year, you're going to get 1 year out of him. Just sell. I want nothing to do with this. And he's, like I said, he's going in that range just after the Dobbins, Sanders, Akers range. I want any of them over him. And if I don't get any of them, I would rather take James Conner or David Montgomery below him. With the news actually this week, I've even been taking Javonte over him, because it's starting to sound like Javonte Williams might actually be ready for week 1, which could just be coach speak, but
no, you're taking the words out of my mouth. This guy, we completely agree. Those are 3 guys I was going to bring up as guys that I would like to take over him that are in the same range. And it's just like, if those guys are there, they're just better values than him, And if I have to take a Sanders or a Dobbins a round earlier, I think they're like 2 or 3 rounds value better than if I had to take Madison. So that's one of the reasons I'm out on Madison as well.
Let's check in on my SFB draft to see if I'm up yet. I'm not. Nate Liss, still on the clock. 6 hours and 22 minutes left. Let's get this going. But as I've been tweeting all morning, this has been the focus of my day. The first 4 picks are pretty much solidified, even up to here. But we somehow managed to let one of the best players I know in Cody have the Jefferson Chase stack, and I'm just appalled that we let that happen. I seen it. I messaged him right after the Andrews pick at what's that 108? I can't see it. I think it's 108, 109.
109, yeah.
Right after the Andrews pick, I messaged him and I said, I'm gonna quit if these two guys fuck this up and let you take a Jefferson Chase stack. And he messaged me back and said, shut the fuck up, don't jinx it. And right when I seen Trevor Lawrence go, I'm going, this guy's gonna pick Christian McCaffrey and hand him this stack. And sure enough, he did. I'm not thrilled. Anyways, let's get back on topic here. We'll bring up your last guy, who is probably the only fantasy player that I want even less than Alexander Madison. We have I guess not newly acquired, first time playing for them, Jacksonville Jaguar receiver Calvin Ridley. The stats you see are from 2020. 2022, he was suspended the whole season for gambling. 2021, he played 5 games due to injury and mental health. So his last relevant season was with the Falcons in 2020. He had 1,374 receiving yards, 9 touchdowns, 268 full PPR points, good for 17.87 per game. Finished as wide receiver 5. Current Fantasy Pros ADP is 53 overall. He is sitting, it's gone up this weekend. He is skyrocketed to 43 this weekend, wide receiver 19. I will bring up the ADP in a second here, but once you see the list of players, like he falls outside that group, that top 15, where the DK Metcalf seems to be the ledge, but there is just no possible way. He's in this group with me. If you see the ADP, he's in this group here with Debo. Him and Debo are the 2 players in this range I want no freaking shares of at all. Why are you out on Ridley?
I think there's enough reasons to be scared to draft him, and I can't believe he's where he's at. Like you say, He's risen, and that's before I even knew he was that high. Like that's ridiculous to me. You're taking a guy that has only had 1 wide receiver 1 season. He's had 1 really productive season. That was with, I believe. I don't know if you remember. Was that with Julio? I think that was.
Yep. That was my other point. All the bracket coverage and the number 1 corner went to Julio.
Exactly, and I'm pretty sure he was in the slot most of those years. Correct?
I don't remember. I just know he wasn't facing the top cup.
Yeah,
I know he most of it came on a bunch of deep balls against my New Orleans Saints, where their defense was just so bad. He got behind them and lit them up for like 300 yards and 4 touchdowns. So even that, it was just a couple of great games where the Saints suck.
Yeah, no, and I think that he has some good players with him, but none of those players are Julio. And I think he's going to be it's just Trevor Lawrence, first off, has to take the next step, which definitely could happen. But even if he does, he's still got a lot of mouths to feed. They brought in Tank Bigsby. They have Travis Etienne there. One of them is both of them are considered pass catchers. So we'll see which one gets more pass catches. Etienne really wasn't used that way last year, but I think they're going to be passing to the running back a lot more this year. I also, you saw the way that Evan Ingram ended his season last year, absolutely dominant. So you got to expect that he's going to want to start the same way because he's on the franchise tag. He needs to play well again to get a contract. So I think he's going to play really well. Christian Kirk looked great last year. He was a top 15 receiver or top 18 receiver last year in fantasy points, I'm pretty sure. So I don't see any reason.
I'd rather take Kirk this year.
Yeah, 100%. I think he's the safer pick. Like I definitely could see a world where he's higher than Calvin Ridley this season in fantasy points. And he's going, I think, 10 or 12 wide receiver spots below him. So
take a look where Kirk is going 53. Yeah, exactly 10 overall spots. It is 6 wide receiver spots.
Right, and I'd rather have Kirk, 100%. Yeah. So I think that I'd probably put a bet on the fact that Kirk will finish higher. I think that Ridley will start slow. We saw what happened with Watson last year. These are very talented players. But we haven't seen anything from Ridley in a year and a half, 2 years. So I think that he'll definitely start slow. He might finish the season well. He might be a buy at the trade deadline, maybe, because he'll end the year better than he started it. Because I don't. But the people that realistically think that he's going to be good to go week 1, like fantasy production, I can't believe people are drafting him as the wide receiver 2. That's what it comes down to. That's ridiculous to me.
Yeah, you're right. I can't see. I don't understand it. Like, I know everyone's gonna say, well, it's not the Michael Thomas situation. Michael Thomas missed 2 years, but it was injuries. This isn't injuries. Okay, well, Deshaun Watson missed 2 years. It was an injury, and he's at a position that's arguably more mental and less physical than Ridley. And not only that, Ridley's not Cooper Kupp coming back to a slot role. He's coming back to a big alpha physical. Like, his game was the big outside physical, deep threat, jump ball guy. These do not age well. He's almost 29. This is like the age where Julio, well, I think Julio lasted another year, maybe two before he fell off, but Julio also didn't sit for 2 years before doing it. This reeks of me of a guy who's going to be back. He may have one good game, but he will be out by the third quarter with a pulled hamstring and will just be on and off the IR all season long. And I want absolutely nothing to do with him anywhere near that ADP.
Can you believe that he's like, I think he's 28, going to be turning 29 this year too? It's just like time flies when you don't play for 2 years. It's pretty ridiculous to me.
That's what I mean. People are buying him. I'm going, why are you buying him in Dynasty? Even if you're right, he's a year away from the age apex. Like, I get it. Receivers can go, like Thielen aged pretty well, and he's 32 and pretty much left for dead. So why do you want someone 29 coming off of 2 years out?
I'm way out on him for redraft. He is my biggest sell in Dynasty. Like, I can't believe he's as high as he is. So
I don't want either of them. All right. Well, thanks, Drew, for joining me. You want to take a second again to plug all your info?
Yeah, totally. I appreciate you having me on, and you can find me Dynasty Drew FF on Twitter. It's been a crazy last month. I've been super sick, and I just moved into my first ever apartment. So getting all that situated. So not really doing much on there right now, but once I get all that figured out, I'll be starting to post podcast episodes again with my co-host Caleb at the Life of a Dynasty League podcast. And then also you can find my articles at FF League Winners. So yeah.
Sounds great. This has been Studs and Duds with Drew Mezera. Once again, I am Aaron St. Dennis at FF Mad Scientist. This has been the Mad Science Lab podcast. Thanks again to Drew for joining me, and thank you everyone for watching. Have fun and good luck in your SFB drafts.